Hi, my name's Lou, and today I'm going to be reading the internet for you. Why? Well, why not? And today's what? We'll be going back to the topic of drug use. Specifically, I'm going to be going to different forums and reading threads where drug users share the times they did the stupidest thing they could do on the drug of their choice. I felt that maybe, after the last episode, there was kind of a minor outcry about how terrible it was. And of course, if you missed the anal destruction episode of Lou Reads, I highly recommend listening to it, all depending on your ability to withstand the concept of destroying your ass as a fetish. Anyway, so there won't be any of that this episode, but however, there will be lots of people doing silly things while under the influence of drugs. And to start the episode, we'll read from a number of different marijuana-related forums. So let's dive right in. And so the first thing we'll read is from the venerable Grass City forums at grasscity.com in the Grass City forum subforum Chill Out Zone subforum Real Life Stories in a thread started by Nathan entitled, "What's the dumbest thing you've done stoned alone?" And it goes like this. Okay, I don't think I ever saw a thread about doing dumb things stoned while alone. So I made one, and I'll start it off. Yesterday, I smoked a bowl and went on GC. I was eating chips and listening to Pink Floyd. I decided to close my eyes because for some reason it felt like my high got stronger with my eyes closed. So there I am eating, listening to music with my eyes closed, and for no apart reason, I chuckled. Guess what happened? The crunched up chips went down my nose. It was the most uncomfortable thing in the world. Also, probably going to the kitchen to put my dishes away, but forgetting the dishes and wondering why I'm in the kitchen. And Frogman929 adds, okay, I smoked a few bowls in the woods behind my house. Got really high, then stumbled home in the dark. When I got home, I put all my paraphernalia and weed in my drawer. Then I went to check my phone for messages. Couldn't find it. Pissed me off. I retraced my steps through the woods in the dark for half an hour, scouring the ground with a flashlight looking for my phone. Then I thought, quote unquote, shit. I probably put it in my drawer with my pipe. My mom will get home and call me to see where I'm at. She will hear the ring and check upstairs, eventually opening my drawer and finding my stash. So I piss-bolted back home, opened my drawer, and found my phone sitting on top of half an ounce of green. I felt like such a dipshit. And Wastoid writes, haha, I've done the dishes bit before. One time I was home alone and I smoked a few bowls in my living room while watching TV. After I finished, I went to get some spray to cover the smell. And then when I went to put the spray back, I got out the duster and went and dusted the TV for some reason. I caught myself mid-dusting and was just like, quote unquote, WTF? I laughed by myself for a good while. And Shroomer310 adds, alright, so I'm about to blaze in my room with my fan blowing out the window and the door locked. I bust out my bong and stash. When I filled the bong water, I left it on the floor next to where I was sitting and the stash on the edge of the desk. I hear a knock on the door, thinking it's my mom. I get up really fast and knock the bong down and the water splashes everywhere, and when I bend down to pick it up in a hurry, I accidentally knocked down my stash, which was mostly shake. It was my freaking sister who gave me my phone that I left in the living room. And Probara writes, put shampoo on my toothbrush and proceeded to brush my teeth till I noticed something tasted really bad. Was holding a bagel with my right hand and a remote controller with my left, brought my left hand to my mouth and chomped down. Pissed in a bottle of water half full that I was drinking. A bit later, proceeded to take a sip from it. And Cassie420 writes, I think I was maybe 15 at the time and I had some anxiety issues when I was younger, due to schizophrenia, not having right diagnosis and whatnot. But back to my story. So I was sitting in my room about to blaze with my windows open, fan going, incense burning to hide the smell. Maybe it's 3 a.m. I figured smoking a little would make me sleep and calm down. I take a few hits and look over at my door to my bedroom, and brackets due to schizophrenia, I got hallucinations, obviously. I saw it opening. So I got plenty freaked out, and to save myself from freaking out, I just opened it and kept on smoking with the door wide open, and I lived at home with my parents. So I'm done smoking, put everything away, and try to see if my room smelled. Forgetting my door was open, well, my room smelled of incense, so I went to bed. But since I forgot my door was open, the rest of the house reeked of dank, and our house was small, so that shit lingered. The whole next day, my mom was trying to figure out what the smell was. She probably put 2 and 2 together because my room wasn't the only one that didn't smell like bud smoke. That was kinda long, probably not the dumbest, but first it came to mind. And yeah. And Puff Puff Laugh adds, I was smoking in my room watching Dark Crystal, brackets, a trippy ass movie. And I noticed that my TV was dirty and began to wipe it down. As I got close to the TV, I started to watch it as I cleaned and ended up finishing 2 movies standing up, my face 5 inches away from the TV. Ha ha. And C. Frenchie Play adds, here's one. I was chilling in my room one day, just smoking a bowl and listening to some Zeppelin. My iPod was dying, so I plugged it into my laptop, and this window pops up and asks me, quote unquote, would you like to scan and fix Frenchie? I gave the computer a very dirty look and told it I was not broken, thank you very much. Brackets, Frenchie is my nickname. Then it dawned on me, A, the computer was referring to my iPod, and B, I just got in an argument with my laptop. And R3ADI7 adds, one time I rolled a few J's in my room, smoked, then went for a drive. I drive to this place about 30 minutes out and check my pockets and realized my papers were nowhere to be found. So I speed back home knowing my parents would anally rape me if they found the papers sitting on my desk. I finally get home and the papers weren't in my desk. I checked my pockets again and found them. And Mr. Hookah adds, I, at one point, got up from my chair whilst watching Futurama and started copying Bender for the hell of it. And Smoke It Up adds, stoned alone? There are so many. Everyone has those moments where they get up to grab a pillow, then forget what they're getting up to do and go get more food, etc. I think I have peed on a towel because the bathroom was too far away, brackets like 25 feet. Ha! Oh, and I wiped up a spilled soda with my brand new t-shirt. And Professor Poon adds, my God, I cannot count the amount of times I've found myself in the kitchen thinking, quote unquote, what the fuck am I doing here? But then I just grab some food while I'm up and go sit down. The dumbest thing I've done stoned alone was smoking inside the trunk of my car. And 206 Roller writes, finished a few bowls in my room, and afterwards Lysoled my room to cover up the smell. All of a sudden, I felt the sudden urge to take a shit. So I go to the bathroom, I sit down on the toilet, and end up passing out while taking a shit. And Mr. Chimney adds, I try not to smoke alone because I usually do really stupid shit when I'm alone and super stoned. The latest thing I've done was try to make, brackets, regular brownies after smoking 5 bowls of some pretty good mids. I was at that point where people start wondering if you are mentally handicapped. Needless to say, I messed up the recipe pretty badly. I ended up adding twice the amount of water because I thought I was making a double batch and I only had 1 egg, so I said fuck it and I just used the 1. I realized the brownies were too liquid as I tried to put them into the over, brackets, and slosh the mix all over the place. Squinting eyes emoticon. So I decided to leave them in the oven for 2 hours instead of 30 minutes. I fell asleep and woke up with my pad smelling like burnt chocolate and quote unquote brownies fused with the glass pan I tried to cook them in. I had to throw the pan away. Cooking is something I don't do stoned anymore. I have posted notes on all of my instant food, brackets, other than the ramen that says, quote unquote, do not attempt to cook while high on them. And Stay High 89 writes, okay, here's my story. I drove to the gas station to grab some gas. I go inside to get a Dutch and tell the clerk to give me 10 on pump 3. After getting in my car driving 2 miles down the road, I wonder why my low fuel light is on. Well, I forgot the next step after I told the clerk to give me 10 on pump 4 and never pumped the gas. Haha, I'm so blazed right now. And Jay Gray adds, I was chilling in my friend's room one night and the cottonmouth got the best of me. I left to go to the kitchen and it was pitch black in the hallway. I opened the fridge and grabbed a bright blue Gatorade. I was stoned, and I was just thinking, quote unquote, oh man, that is such a bright fucking blue. When I closed the fridge door, it went back to pitch black, and my first instinct was to hold the Gatorade up to give off light, because it was so bright. Ah ha ha, I felt like a dumbass when I caught myself. I like this thread, BTW. Jay Gray. And Open Mind writes, dumbest thing I've done alone? Well, I knew my parents were coming home, and I was high as fuck, so I have no eye drops, but I was like, quote unquote, fuck it, I'll use contact solution, and just poured that shit in my eyes. Ha ha. And B. Cush writes, the third time I was high, I tried to grow a plant in a shot glass using only the stem and a piece of a leaf. LOL. And from that forum, we move to a new forum entitled rollitup.org. And specifically, we'll be reading from a thread in the rollitup.org forums, subforum Cannabis Cafe, subforum Token Talk, in a thread started by Manny entitled Stupid Stuff You've Done While High. And it goes like this. I think this thread was pretty inevitable. Smiley face emoticon. So what really stupid stuff have you done while high? I haven't really done anything particularly stupid, but I'll start off with one memorable, brackets, or not so, occasion. Anyway, I was at a party and I had a few beers, brackets, I was by no means drunk. Just at that stage where most ideas seem great and you end up doing them. So anyway, my mate produces a big bag of bud, brackets, not sure of the strain. We smoked a lot, much more than we usually would. I blacked out and woke up 30 miles from my house on a bench, but it gets weirder. One of my shoes was missing its laces. How I managed to loose the laces of my shoe, I'll never know. Luckily, my mate was with me, or I probably would have been mugged during the night or something. Sounds like a wacky story, but it did actually happen. Anybody else want to share their experiences? Grinning face emoticon. And Cracker Kid adds, I've done many stupid things while I was high before. Unfortunately, I can't remember any of them at the moment, except this one account of misfortune. Me, my little bro, and one of my friends burned 3 blunts and began looking for something to do. So we grabbed my skateboard and began walking around in my yard. Okay, I want to first mention we live in the ghetto. And we have a tin roof. We noticed this quickly and let's skate off the roof, my friend said. So I got up there and grabbed the skateboard for my friend. By this time, about 10 black kids from all along the street had come to see what we were doing. So I'm on top of my house with the skateboard and getting ready to ride down a tin roof. Pretty sure anyone who's reading this, who knows physics, has already guessed what has happened. Yes, I stood on the board. I stood up, the board flung from under me, off the roof, hitting my friend. I fell straight backwards, hitting my head. Worried only about my head at the moment and not the motions of my movement, I slid off the roof. Has to be one of the stupidest moments I had. But I came out okay, except a bump on the back of my head. Good times are always high times. And Holiday Mel writes, stupidest thing was smoking and getting paranoid. Smoked some Jamaican yardweed and hoped on the train home. Paranoid that cops would smell weed on me. I put my Walkman on, and it takes a while before it starts to play. The intro starts with a rapper talking to you, and when it started, I got startled and started looking around to see who it was, but then realized it was my Walkman. And CP99 writes, I guess the funniest thing I did was climb onto the roof of a nearby school with my friends in the winter. We rolled up a 6-gram joint. It was an evil-looking thing nonetheless. It got me fucked up, and I got up to stretch and noticed that I had begun moving. I thought I was really stoned, so I didn't think that much of it until I realized I was really moving, sliding on the ice on the roof. Anyhow, I slid right off the damn roof. Luckily, there was a good-sized pile of snow on the ground, which broke my fall, but it gets worse. After recovering from the fall, I looked up, and there was a cop and some weird-looking security guard just looking at me like I was some weird being. So I got arrested and charged with trespassing on private property, and my friends screwed off shortly after. It was a really odd trip. All I remember was laughing at the cop because of the way he looked at me. Odd yet true. And Do B writes, don't remember the whole night. It started with smoking a tampon joint. That is a joint That is a joint rolled in a tampon paper. Well, I blacked out after it was smoked. Woke up the next day in my friend's sister's bed still. Want to know what the hell went on that night. Hope I had fun. Also hope I didn't get a kid from that night. And wanna smoke that AK-47 added. This day sucked, just hated finished smoking 2 fat ass of blunt Northern Lights with a few pialpal. Try to go inside, the door was locked, knock on the window for my little brother to open the door. When I knock, broke the window in a piece of glass, cut the shit out of me. Well, when I saw that I was bleeding a shitload, I started panking and ran to the hospital. Was about meal away when I was running. I see a shitload of pialpal looking at me like WTF. I was bleeding everywhere. I was made because no one offered me a ride, peeps, these days. Well, 32 stitches later, I'm okay. And Nemesis 221 writes, the most stupidest thing I did while blazed was a year ago. Me and 5 other guys had the munchies, but we had no cash at all. So seeing that I live in the States, we go to a local shop. All 5 of us just run in there and do a snatch and run. On the way out, my bud tripped over poorly paved sidewalk and passed out. We were still close to the shop, so we dropped off the stuff and hid him behind a garbage can. And then we all got to our pad and ate everything and had a good laugh. Then the door opens and my friend who we left shows up, mad as fuck. Not about the passing out, but B/C. We ate all the snacks we took. And we'll move from that thread to a new forum, and one we've been to before, known as bluelight.org. And specifically, we'll be reading from the bluelight.org subforum Focus Forums, subforum Psychedelic Drugs, in a thread started by Norco for Life, entitled, Dumbest Thing You Have Done While Tripping. And it goes like this. Disclaimer, the below post is a very good example of stupid and dangerous behavior undertaken while tripping. Let this thread be a place where we reflect on what not to do again. Swillow. I ate 5 grams of dried mushrooms at school and did an art project. I got lost in my classroom. Thankfully, the teacher wasn't in the room. The second time I took LSD, I and my friend walked around town most of the night with a bag full of fireworks. We started at an elementary school talking about the allegory of the cave, then walking through town shooting fireworks. About half an hour later, we found a train bridge overlooking a highway some 300 feet below us, with cars coming towards us and fireworks going towards them. It was a rush I will never forget. Tripping again this Saturday coming. We'll post stories. Now let's hear yours. XD. And IGNVS writes, "Ha, I walked 8 miles one time when I was on acid. I didn't even consider it a stupid thing to do. I do think it was stupid listening to this security guard who didn't know fucking shit for directions. He sent us right into these sawgrass bundles and shit, and then over a fence when we just could have walked through this hotel. What a fucker." Also, hotboxing a tent on a rather popular beach. And Cosmic Charlie writes, "One time me and my girlfriend split a quarter of some amazing mushrooms, and while we were tripping we decided to have sex. We must have been fucking for hours when I finally came down from the super intense trip. I mean, our bodies seemed as if they were melting into one another. I looked down and realized that I had no condom on, and she was covered in you-know-what. She ended up getting pregnant, but lost the baby a few months later. We ended up breaking up because of this in the long run. I honestly have never had sex on mushrooms since. Bugging out eyes emoticon." And Igor writes, "Went to vote in 2004 on 12 inches of San Pedro and about 20 milligrams of 2C-T-4. And Armor Fatty writes, "So that's why George Bush won." Winking emoticon. And Geist89 writes, "Walking around in a wooded area, brackets with splinters, jagged rocks, and creepy crawlies all over the ground, with no shoes on. I woke up in immense pain, and both of my feet covered in dried blood and dirt. That or thinking 3.5 grams of mushrooms would help me write a better paper for my ethics class. Those mushrooms made me get a D in the class." Frowny face emoticon. And Modular writes, "I drove on 4 hits of acid and couldn't figure out how to get the brights off. Other than that, I didn't screw up. It was dumb as shit. July 3rd, brackets, they do fireworks July 4th, am in Alaska. And then I had to get back. No one died, so that was a bonus." And Feel Good Hit writes, "The dumbest thing I did involving tripping that I can think of right now is dropping 13 milligrams of 2C-E thinking it was degraded on a school day, brackets, i.e. I had school at 6 p.m., dropped it at about 11 a.m. Then when it didn't kick in, I took a couple of milligrams of 4-ACO-DMT, and that's when they both kicked in. The rest of the trip was spent frantically scheming a way to avoid ending up at school tripping balls for midterms. What I ended up doing was sitting down and writing my entire midterm paper, tripping absolute face with rainbows flying out of the screen. I then emailed it to my teacher and asked if I still had to come to school. He said it was fine and that I didn't. I got an A, but I'll never pull a stunt like that again." And Silent Science adds, "Ate 3 mushroom turtle chocolates, brackets, high dose per chocolate. Started to lose depth perception while smoking on my buddy's couch. Started burning his couch with my cigarette. He yelled at me and I jumped backwards over his couch, knocking over a huge stack of videos. I also started trying to eat his stuffed caterpillar, claiming I could, quote-unquote, taste the colors. Done tons of other stupid shit too." And SKL writes, "Where do I begin? Brackets, harm reduction says, do as I say, etc. Pharmacologically and statistically speaking, I should be dead or in prison. Driving, calling my adamantly anti-drug girlfriend, driving in the ghetto, trying to IV drugs while my arms were breathing and dissolving, going to class, missing the last train out of Boston at around 1 a.m. in the middle of an epic rainstorm because I went outside to smoke a cigarette, talking to the chair of my department in college about my life plans, accidentally squirting a quarter vial into someone's hand in the parking lot of a music venue, falling in love with some headily homeless chick, hooking up with some mentally unstable guy's recently ex-girlfriend on his couch, brackets, he was too spun to the moon too, and wound up grabbing a knife." And Zeke the Music Man adds, "My stupid ass once stopped driving in the middle of the nearly empty interstate late night after a concert. I had to stop because I just could not look at the freaking stars. We soon found a scenic overlook and then had a good convo with an elderly state trooper. We were up in the hill laying down watching the stars swing around like ornaments, brackets, all 5 of us, when I see the trooper pull up to my car. Oh shit, that's a... Fuck, stay here and don't move or make a sound. So 2 of my friends popped up out of the weeds with me and proceed to walk up to the trooper's car exactly how they tell you not to. The only thing that came out of our mouths, aside from small chunks of half-melted sugar from the cubes, were stutters. Then it came to me. I told him the truth. Brackets, I know, crazy, huh? Smiley face emoticon. I just told him that we can't see stars like this where we're from. The trooper whimsically looked up and said, quote-unquote, no, son, you really don't. Y'all have a good night." And Native Nick writes, "I freaked out after eating 10 grams of mush. Don't ask me how, but somehow I got it into my head that I got AIDS from snorting coke." Don't ask me how, but I somehow got it into my head that I got AIDS from snorting coke lots, and I honestly believed I did. I was with my friends and my cuz, and they were all tripping too. Anyways, I started to think about it more and more and just freaked out. I freaked out and started crying and shit. My cuz started tripping out and crying too because he believed me, and my 2 other friends knew I was just way too fucked up though. Once the mush wore off, I calmed down and realized how stupid I was for thinking that. And Insanit_T writes, I was up at my parents' house in the Australian bush and decided to eat a tab there by myself one day. I really wanted to go for a walk, but it was a scorching hot day and the grass was really long and full of deadly snakes. But I saw a storm cloud coming, so I decided to wait until the rain started and then there wouldn't be snakes. The cloud came over and I decided to go for my walk. About 15 minutes down this steep mountain into a very big open valley, and then the cloud just went straight over me without raining, and the scorching sun came back out, and I was stranded in this boiling hot valley with snakes everywhere. So I decided to walk home up this massive hill, got a bit lost, and got a blood-sucking leech on me, etc., etc. God bless Australian wildlife. Shouldn't have gone off cruising on my own. Oh, God. And Silent Science adds again, took a bunch of acid and ketamine last New Year's. My girlfriend had a friend over, and I started whipping out my dick and trying to make a threesome happen. She was turned on at first, but I think she was too high on acid to want to do it. So my girlfriend and I ended up fucking on our bed in front of her. Ha ha ha. We all ended up sort of cuddling afterwards, but I just remember continually taking my penis out and waving it in front of her. Ha ha ha. And Skate by Blind writes, I stomped on a pizza box because it was talking to me and sprouted horns. So me and my friends stomped on it and ripped it up and put the pieces in different rooms and hid with a baseball bat in fear of it reforming. And Rangers writes, I took a dump in someone's boot at a party while on methamp and PCP. The young lass went to put her boots on to leave and lulls were had. Brackets, by me anyways. And Delcid writes, lost/through/gave away my wallet and cell phone after eating 10 to 13 hits of acid. Because, well, who needs possessions anyway, right? Same trip I told a stranger that I loved him, brackets, and everyone/thing in that cosmic universal love way. He took it in a homo way and threatened to beat my ass. I guess telling strangers in NYC you love them isn't the greatest idea. Trying to get home with no money was somewhat difficult too, but at least I was soberish by that point. Lesson learned, don't eat a bunch of acid just because some drunk hippie insists on dropping it on your tongue. And DOB writes, tripping at home with my extremely anti-drug grandparents. It was my third time on DOB, 2 milligrams. They didn't notice anything weird until I tried to check my heartbeat and blood pressure on that strange machine. Results? Pressure 142-106, heartbeat 112. I was peaking mess at the time, and I forgot to turn off that machine. After about 5 minutes, my grandmother asked with fear in her face, what is wrong with my heartbeat? And she immediately checked on that machine again. I started to freak out badly because I had very big fear that she will notice that I'm under influence of drug. This time my heartbeat was like 120. I said that it is from cig I smoked before. She doesn't believe me, and I checked again. This time it was 132, absolute mental terror. She started to freak out too and checked it again, equals 145. I'm shaking from fear. And again, 168. She looked at me like I was going to die and I curl in my bed. She put some cold blankets soaked in water on my chest. I somehow calmed myself and it was okay later, but I will never forget that terror that was going stronger with each check. And we'll move from that thread in that forum to a new thread on the opiophile.org forums. Now, you may remember this is a forum where people go if they like to do opiates. And we'll read from a thread in the opiophile.org forum, subforum opiates/opioids/subforum heroin, in a thread started by Defense 32 entitled Embarrassing Things Done While Nodding. And it goes like this. Sorry if it's already a thread. I searched but found nothing. So what kind of dumb shit have y'all done while nodding? I don't mean falling down or something like that necessarily, more so falling asleep on an old woman on the bus, or dropping a full cup of pop on the floor at the pop machine in a restaurant, brackets, yeah, I'm a fool, or saying insane shit while half nodded, like telling the bus driver, quote unquote, I'm at Subway, I'll be back soon, when he tells you end of the line. Stories? And Makita writes, most embarrassing story ever. I was in a private meeting with one of my teachers at art school who didn't like me very much because I was working on a project about my drug use while he felt I should be in rehab trying to stop my drug use. As he is chewing me out for being a fuck up and I'm trying to convince him my work has merit and I am putting my heart and soul into it and I really believe in the uniqueness of my perspective and I didn't just want to do another stereotypical quote unquote junkie destroys life with heroin story because I felt it wasn't my story, I nod out in the middle of the conversation and he totally catches me. I awake to him exasperatedly yelling, quote unquote, you can't even hold a conversation. You're nodding out even now. The thing was, the reason I was nodding was because I was on my first month of methadone and my dose was still being adjusted. But I didn't want to tell him that because I didn't want to give him the satisfaction of knowing I was quote unquote in treatment, like he and his position had won and I'd see the error of my ways. That douchebag ended up nearly failing me, even though I worked my ass off in that class, even doing side projects along my main project just to show him I could do something not about drugs. Worst part of it was, he was totally my hero before I took that class with him. I loved him and looked up to his work, wanting to be like him. Sigh. Rude awakening. And J-Dub writes, yeah, I nodded out at my ex-girlfriend's graduation dinner in front of her whole family. Bad. I still get embarrassed thinking about it. Also, nodding off on the drive to rehab with my dad. And Mudspoon writes, I fell on a table in a pizza shop in Panama City, Florida a couple years back. I woke up to my friends pulling me up off the ground. The table broke, the owner was pissed, but it worked out fine. I still remember it like it was yesterday because I had rigged up right before leaving to get food. I remember walking up to the door and being like, quote unquote, this shit is fire. And then I woke up covered in that fucking red sauce with my friend Cole saying, quote unquote, we need to leave. Apparently I was trying to sit down right after we got our food and I fell face/chest first into the table. Regrets, but not really. And Hydrophile writes, yeah, I'll go with a few times before I moved out with my ex when my mom and I would have full conversations and me not remember them at all. She knew something was up then. Haha. Kinda not cool though, at all. Oh well. Or nodding in grunt of my ex-girlfriend's mom while we were wathing a movie, but all lights were on and it was daytime. They knew I was on shit though. They never openly just said it, but they would always make jokes. I worked with her dad and he said I was the only person he could never tell when in was fucked up unless we drank. I'm sure it shocks y'all I act the fool when I'm drunk, haha, but doesn't everybody? And Shelley writes, be me, just shot .25 of sick-ass heroin at liquor store, also be drunk off flavored vodka, OMFG eyes won't open.jpg, began to walk to Buddy's house for a rock to wake up a bit, find Buddy is not home, need to get to Golden Glades ASAP if I want crack, am inch away from train station, how convenient, here's the plan, seems simple, travel one stop north, get stoned, blast, back on train, blast, home, but instead enter train, immediately fall asleep, that deep unconsciousness FTW, wake up on ground, WTF happened.gif. Traveled 2 full counties north to Magonia Park, still no rock, instead 2 cops and a paramedic. How exciting. And Opie8 writes, went to my first AA meeting like 5 years ago after having just relapsed. Probably only had like 3 weeks clean. Did 5 OC40s before the meeting and proceeded to nod my fucking ass off for the entire meeting. I kept getting cups of coffee trying to wake myself up, and I nodded out with a full cup in my hands. I remember hearing a splash sound and thought, quote unquote, haha, some dumbass just spilled their coffee. That dumbass was me. And Mudvayne writes, mine would mostly consist of being at family events and quote-unquote going to the bathroom, brackets read going to shoot up, and coming out and ending up falling out about 5 minutes later. This actually happened to me on 2 different occasions for family gatherings like Thanksgiving dinner or Christmas or something. I don't remember the specifics. I do remember being woken up by a nice Narcan shot from the friendly paramedics while lying on the living room floor of my aunt's house both times though. That was pretty shitty. My family already knew I was an addict but thought I was clean, so that just made it worse. Nodding out at in the toilet at work and getting fired for it for going missing for like 2 hours, nodding out in school while giving a speech in my public speaking class, brackets this just happened like a month ago, was extremely embarrassing. Probably have more, but I'd have to think about it a bit. And Furry Frenchman adds, actually, just last week after partaking in a supermarket parking lot of some rather good D, I was in the grips of an epic nod while driving to the comfort of home. Not something I recommend, BTW. I opened my eyes just long enough to notice the nice-ass Camaro in front of me had stomped on the brakes, so I responded, and just in time, without plowing into the back of him, but unfortunately ran into a ditch. I should also mention that I was in eyesight of home. Most of my embarrassing stories usually involve, quote-unquote, doping and driving, and so I've pretty much learned from these embarrassments to wait until I reach home. Don't know if that's what you're looking for, but I felt pretty fucking embarrassed that time. And La Somnambule writes, I have a habit of muttering nonsense to myself as I am waking from a nod, sort of like a weird dream narration. Whenever this happens with other normal people in the room, I sometimes attempt to cover it by adding more words on top of more words in a semi-conscious effort to shape my utterances into something that sounds sane and coherent, like I'll grab a word or two from the torrent of gibberish and try to relate it back to something in that day's news, brackets or something. I guess I assume if I just keep talking, it will eventually start to make sense. I always fail miserably, though, and by the time I come to enough to realize what I'm saying, I can see that it's a completely bizarre sequence of non sequitur nonsense. Usually by this time, the whole room has stopped what they're doing and turned to look at me with a familiar, quote-unquote, the fuck look on their faces. This has happened more than once, especially when I was still trying to hide my habit brackets from my SO. Now I know just to STFU as soon as I hear my own voice starting to ramble like that. Anybody else do that? The drug-addled dream jabber? Followed by a failed attempt to make it sound like you know exactly what you're talking about. And Zistel writes, I nodded off while laying down on a pillow smoking a cigarette once. I woke up with it in flames around my face. I nodded off before starting work one day and spilled hot coffee all over my crotch. The embarrassing part of that was I didn't wake up right away from the burning coffee soaking into my pants. It was the laughter of all the other employees that brought me out of Nodland. By far the most embarrassing, though, was nodding off on a park bench that was a little too close to the street. Apparently, I fell over and rolled onto the street while sleeping the nod of the angels. I woke up with 2 fire trucks and an ambulance parked to the side, and every single one of the firefighters and EMTs in a tight circle around me, trying to wake me up. I came to, saw them all, and then just sort of stumbled off on my own, muttering something about getting a coffee and a cheeseburger. I didn't make it that far, and ended out nodding off in a park again. At least that one wasn't right next to the road. Thank dog. And Static adds, I'm pretty sure the most embarrassing thing I've ever done while faded as fuck was literally nodding out right in the middle of giving my girlfriend face. Oh man, was she pissed. I basically headbutted her pussy. She wiggled out from under me and stayed in that position for a good 45 minutes. Now she laughs about it, but at the time, I fucked up her orgasm. So you know she was pissed. Smiley face emoticon. Okay, well, drugs. Always fun. I hope you enjoyed hearing these silly tales of people's drug adventures. No real mega bummer trips, just people being dumb. I've shared my dumb drug stories. I'm not going to bore you again. Being grabbed by that raccoon. Silly. So, what about you? You guys scoring some sweet drugs? I know it's not phenazepam. Those are almost always not dumb things you've done on drugs that you can recover from. They're usually like, I did phenazepam, that's the dumb thing, and then you wake up 2 weeks later in jail. Sorry this episode took so long, but I started off and then hated what I did, so I had to redo some of it. Boy, February, Valentine's Day, stuff, Black History Month, words. So how are things with you? Things are okay, work is crazy. But besides that, I've just been dragging my feet and making this podcast, and I apologize. No real news. I still have lots of magnets if you're a new listener because you read the article on Splitsider or you loved hearing about anal destruction. Please request a magnet. Send an email to loureads@gmail.com and I will send you a magnet. It's free. And I hope you enjoyed listening to my recent appearance on the F+. It was a lot of fun to do. I did not receive any sort of monetary recompense for all of my super positive pyramid hat talk. I paid for my own pyramid hat, and it is clearing out all my orgone energy waves or whatever we were talking about. That was fun to do, and I hope you enjoyed listening to it. I may be on another podcast in the near future on a totally different vibe of podcast, but I will announce more about that if it happens. And besides that, not a whole lot. Okay, well, I think that's going to do it for me. I hope you enjoyed listening to this episode of Lou Reads about the dumbest thing people have done on drugs. My name's Lou. This has been Lou Reads the Internet for you. We'll see you soon.